Mindset AI presents The Tragic Fall of the Queen, a tale of courage, love, and betrayal. The Kingdom of Nuimor was rich and beautiful. Dense forests covered most of the land through which rivers meandered, many of them flowing into Lake Penleche. There were two main mountain ranges, the largest of which were the Haslam Mountains in the east. The most rugged was the Chadon Range in the north. There the highest peak, Mount Lidl, towered above one of the most formidable forts that bore its name. The land was ruled by King Aedan, the third of that name, and his beautiful queen. So fair was she that there was even a rumor that Queen Ashrin had elven blood running in her veins. She was the king's second wife, his first having succumbed to a terrible illness that had swept through the land some 10 years ago, and thus she was much younger than her husband. The previous queen gave birth to a son before she died, and named him Prince Niren. Queen Ashrin loved the boy as if he was her own, even after Princess Kia, her own daughter, was born. Soon after that, alas, the king himself fell ill. He never really recovered, and his ailment rendered him frail and incapable of fathering any more children. One of the kingdom's most loyal subjects was Braylin. He was an officer in the king's guard and had been secretly in love with Queen Ashrin before she married the king. They remained close friends even after that, and as the years passed, this friendship developed into an intimate affair. When King Aedan discovered this, he did not object. He realized that the queen was much younger than he was, and thus, because of his frailty, he could not satisfy her desires. Instead of being angry at her, he felt sorry that she found it necessary to seek attention elsewhere. He also respected Braylin, her lover, and assured himself that his trusted officer would not mistreat her in any way. Thus he comforted himself with the knowledge that in the event of his own passing, she would be well cared for. At first the lovers would meet in secret, sometimes under cover of darkness or even in disguise. But soon they felt safe enough to openly show their affection towards each other. Even then, out of respect, they would not do so anywhere near Montburn Castle, the king's residence, or even in the city of Cathdel, Nuimor's capital. They even had a special place, deep within the forest near Lake Penleche, where they would go to enjoy precious and intimate moments together. Alas, what the lovers did not consider was that their secret place was close to the fortified town of Foxton, the home of King Aedan's younger brother. Prince Valrin was as vengeful and wicked as his brother was kind and generous. After a particularly vicious argument that culminated in the younger assaulting the king in a fit of rage, the prince stormed out of Montburn Castle. He took up residence in the large fort that overlooked Foxton and secretly gathered a number of followers. Fortunately, these were not enough to manage a full-blown rebellion against the throne, but Valrin was ever watchful, waiting for an opportunity to vent his jealousy and hatred upon his older sibling. The affair between Queen Ashrin and Braylin, sadly, afforded him just such a chance. One day, he and a party of his associates were out hunting near the lake when they happened upon an old cottage. Thinking that it was empty, they decided to investigate it. That was how they discovered that this was the couple's secret place. The prince said nothing, but returned to Foxton, all the while contemplating a scheme in which he could use this against the king. Not only did he covet the throne, but he despised the fact that it was going to be handed down to the crown prince, Prince Niren. This was because he too had a son whose name was Rivaler, and he wished that it was he who would become ruler of this great land. Rivaler and his cousin were roughly the same age. He also felt that his brother was too soft on the people, allowing his subjects to prosper instead of taxing the heart and soul out of them. Thus he was certain that he was better suited for the role of monarch. Not only that, but he had made sure that his son was just as skilled a despot as he wished to be. Prince Valrin went to his brother.
Your wife, our queen, is seeing another man. Not only that, but her lover is not one of us. An honorable man he might be, but he is not of a noble house.
That other man to whom you refer is loyal to me, and I am certain that he will treat her better than many of the so-called nobles of whom you speak.
You are aware of this tryst, and yet you will do nothing.
I am old and frail. I can no longer please one so young and lively. Thus my answer would be yes, on both accounts.
Another argument followed, after which Valrin began to plot his brother's downfall. First, he tried to rally the people against their king by telling them about the affair and his unwillingness to deal with it decisively. But soon he realized that their loyalty to their monarch was too strong, and even his most manipulative and persuasive words would not sway them. Because of this, he devised a more diabolical plan. He called upon the services of one of the most devious assassins in the land, a man named Gorred, and together they hatched a scheme against the king. One winter's afternoon, the king was in his chambers with his 2 children. Even though there were roaring fires in the many hearths positioned all around the castle, it was still very cold at times, so when one of the king's advisors entered wearing a hooded cloak, he thought nothing of it. The man approached his ruler and bowed low.
Your Majesty, by your leave, your presence is required as a matter of urgency in the council hall.
Lead the way, Lord Almar.
Nay, after you, my liege.
The monarch rose and was just in front of his advisor when the figure sprung into action. Throwing off his cloak, he grabbed Aiden's hood and with one swift stroke, stabbed him in the neck.
Guards, to me.
As the doors flew open, Gorred leapt through the arched window, landing safely on the soft snow on the ground beneath the sill. He had to correct himself quickly, or else he would have plummeted to his death off the cliffs upon which the castle was built. Even though there was a moat, it had frozen over, and the ice was as solid as rock. Before his escape, the assassin had dropped the dagger he had used to slay the king, the same weapon he had conveniently stolen from Braylon some time before. When the guards came to investigate, they found the king lying in a pool of his own blood, and the dagger lying on the ground near to where he lay. As there was no one else in the room at the time, there were no witnesses as to what had really happened. Although the evidence was pretty damning to say the least, no one could believe that Braylon had gone so far as to commit actual murder. Nonetheless, he was arrested under suspicion. After all, the murder weapon did belong to him. Even though he did have an alibi, there was no one who could verify it as he had been alone at the time that the deed was committed. He also claimed that the dagger in question had recently been misplaced, a statement that appeared to be more than a little convenient. What did not escape the people of Nuimor's notice was that no sooner had King Aiden been buried, when his brother assumed his position as the new ruler of the land. Queen Ashrin was confined to her chambers, and guards were posted at her door to prevent her from leaving. Luckily, just before her imprisonment, she had sent Prince Nyron to the home of one of her most loyal admirers. He was in charge of the royal stables, and his name was Ian. The queen suspected that something terrible was about to happen, and thus gave her son a note with strict instructions.
My dear Ian, if anything should happen to me, now that my husband is dead and my beloved wrongfully imprisoned, you must take the prince and flee to the old fort to the northeast of the Chadden Mountains. I have sent Princess Kia elsewhere. Although it saddens me to my very soul to do this, it will be best for both of them to be separated until this trouble is over.
Tears streamed down her face as she embraced her stepson and watched him leave.
May the gods preserve you, my son.
When King Valrin discovered what she had done, he was infuriated. He demanded that she tell him where the child had been taken, and when she refused, he had her beaten until her face and body were covered in cuts and bruises. One of the guards who was on duty when this took place was horrified by this act of brutality. Although he was not particularly loyal to the previous monarchy, the guard detested the way Queen Ashrin was treated, as were a number of his colleagues. Eventually, the news reached Ian's ears. He and 2 of the watchmen then developed a plan to rescue both the queen and her lover. The attempt was successful, although one of the rescuers was captured. Without even standing any form of trial, he was dragged out into the city square and beheaded in front of his own wife and children, who were forced to watch as he was slain. Public executions had been outlawed for over a century, so the people looked upon this in horror. Valrin, who had earned the title of Usurper King, sneered as the sword was brought down onto the victim's neck. No sooner had the soldier been slain when the tyrant addressed the shocked crowd.
May this serve as a warning to any who dare to oppose me. They will suffer the same fate as this traitor.
Even so, the Queen and Braylin were free. They were reunited in the small village of Selsens, deep in the forest to the northeast of the capital city. One evening they were together in the garden of their host. Queen Ashrin seemed more than a little distant, as though something heavy was weighing on her mind. Braylin looked at her with worry in his eyes.
"What troubles you so, my queen?"
She turned towards him, and he could see that she was weeping. He took her in his arms. She buried her fair head into his manly chest, and they stood there for a while in silent contemplation. At last she looked up at him.
Valrin and his thugs will not stop until my children and I are dead, my departed husband's line ended. As long as I am alive, my children are in danger. Thus, to keep their location safe, I must die. If he captures me again, gods alone know what torments he will put me through to make me talk. Nay, I will depart this world on my own terms.
"You speak of suicide?"
The distraught queen merely nodded in reply.
"No, my love. There must be another way."
Alas, beloved, I have thought long and hard, searching for an alternative, but there is no such option. Search your own heart, lover. You know this to be so.
"But I cannot imagine life without you."
You must, my sweet. You must, both for my sake and for that of my children. When they are old enough, I want you to tell them of my demise, and the terrible events that led up to it. Perhaps then my son will rise up against that villain, overthrow him, and take back the throne that is rightfully his.
Unable to reply, Braylin nodded his head in response. The following day the couple made their way to the mountain hamlet of Varken, where Princess Kia was living under the watchful eye of her guardian, Lord Camus. Braylin felt that it was best to leave mother and daughter to spend these valuable moments together without any interference from him, so he kept his distance. One night the queen was certain she could hear strange noises coming from outside her window. She kept the drapes closed and did not dare to investigate. The next morning the night watchman reported that they spotted a shadowy figure crouched on the balcony in front of her chambers, but it had vanished into the night before they could react.
"It is clear that the usurper will soon discover our whereabouts. We cannot stay here."
They left the small village the following day. Queen Ashrin left strict instructions with Lord Camus.
When Braylin returns to you, you must send word to Prince Niren. Braylin knows the whereabouts of his hiding place. Using the safest and most secret paths, he must be brought to Varken. Send word then to the garrison at Fort Lidl, so that they may send an escort to guard him while he journeys thence. He must remain there until he is ready to retake the throne.
Lord Camus acknowledged her, and the two lovers departed, heading northeast through some of the most rugged country in the whole of Nuimor. Fort Lidl had been built in such a way that its inhabitants could keep a watchful eye over the northern and west coast. It was said that on a clear day one could just see the spires and towers of Cathdel from the highest watchtower. It also acted as a refuge to which the ruler of the land could flee if he had been dethroned. Built almost entirely out of solid rock, with steep cliffs on three sides and a narrow entrance with a moat on either side of it, this formidable fortress was nigh unassailable. The lovers were welcomed by Commander Garin, the garrison's senior officer, and shown to their quarters. They spent 2 blissful days together, But alas, the couple knew that they could not last. It was only a matter of time before one of Valren's spies would find them and even kill them both. And so, after one last night of heated passion, Queen Ashrin was ready to carry out her plan. Before she took the deadly dose, she tearfully said,
You have been the bright star in so much darkness. Your warmth, your touch, your smile, these and so much more, shall I carry with me to the evergreen realm. Even there shall I remember them in my heart until we meet again, and are reunited forever. Weep not for me, my love, but rather for those who remain under the tyranny of that usurper, my brother-in-law, for soon shall I be free of all the wickedness with which he has inflicted this once beautiful land. I pray that the true heir to my late husband's throne will cleanse it and make it whole once more. Kiss me one last time, that I might bear the taste of your lips with me on the path that awaits me.
Braylin bent over and kissed her, not wanting to let her go. Reluctantly their lips parted, and Queen Ashrin put the small vial to her lips. She struggled to swallow the liquid within, that burned all the way down. Once or twice she lurched forward, but kept herself from bringing up by sheer determination. Within seconds the light from her eyes began to fade and her face became ashen. Her breathing started to become labored. She coughed and a trickle of blood dribbled out of her mouth. With one final convulsion, one last desperate breath, the beautiful Queen Ashrin sank into oblivion, still holding her lover's hand.
Forgive me, my love.
Braylin kissed her dying lips again and stroked her hair, tears streaming down his face, which he lay atop her breast as her heartbeat slowly ceased.
There is nothing to forgive, my queen. There are many things I can pardon, and many more that I have in my lifetime, but the treachery that has led to this moment I will never exculpate. Those responsible will pay dearly, mark my words.
Just then all composure abandoned him. He stumbled out onto the balcony outside the chambers, where the couple had spent their last night, and fell to the floor sobbing uncontrollably. Words could not express the anger and grief that poured out of him, as each gut-wrenching cry seemed to tear his very soul apart. Just before dawn, he awoke cold and shivering. He was lying in the exact same place and position as he had when he cried himself to sleep. A small procession, led by the local priest, carried the queen's body to a secret tomb. She was borne on a bier made of rough logs and covered with ceremonial herbs and flowers. Above her head was the delicate crown she wore while she was still in power. Her gown, though simple, was befitting a lady of her position. Her hands and fingers were decorated with rich jewels, and her eyes were covered, not with coins as was the tradition for common folk, but with 2 gold pendants. As they lowered her into the small cave, Braylin hugged her knees, pressing his cheek against her lifeless thighs. He almost incoherently mumbled a last farewell before he and the other pallbearer exited the grave, and a large stone was rolled in place to conceal the entrance. News of the queen's tragic death spread throughout the realm, and the people of Nuimor mourned her parting. But far from sinking into despair, anger welled up within their hearts. Even those who were still loyal to the tyrant Valren at last saw him for what he truly was. Thus it was that even before Prince Nairon was old enough to lead the revolt, the citizens rose up against the despot. At the forefront of the uprising were a number of the usurper's own captains, led by Braylin himself. It was not long before King Valren found himself contending with a vast army, with little more than a handful of men who were too blind or too corrupt to realize that their days were numbered. On the main bridge that led into Cathdel, the final battle took place. It was not long before Valren's ragtag band of brigands was defeated, and he stood alone at the mercy of those he and his family had extorted, abused, and mistreated ever since the rightful king of Nuimor had been slain. He was about to end his own pitiful life when a young figure came up and knocked his sword from his hand. When he looked to see who it was that dared deny him his planned escape, his heart sank at the sight of his own son looking down upon him with disdain. In a voice filled with disgust, Prince Revaler stated,
"No, father, you shall not deny these people the justice they deserve. You taught me to be ruthless and cruel as you are, but I am man enough now to know better."
It was your mother who poisoned your mind and your heart. I was right.
The young man struck his own father with the flat of his sword, so that he fell face down onto the cobbles.
You had her killed because you are delusional. In your mind, anyone who disagreed with your tyranny was a traitor to the crown that you did not deserve, nor were even fit to wear.
Valrin was taken captive. Before his hearing almost a year later, he was stripped naked and forced to wear rags. He was then dragged barefoot through the streets of Nuimor's capital. The people stood on either side. They spat on him and struck him as he passed. Those that could not reach him jeered and hurled clods of horse manure at him. When he stumbled, the soldiers forced him to stand up again, and the cavalcade continued until it reached the Hill of Reckoning, the place where criminals would be tried and executed if needs be. The high priest stood in the center of the henge, dressed in full ceremonial robes. Behind him were the other 10 members of the council, which had been reinstated shortly after Valrin's defeat. In order to silence it, Valrin had held many of the body's members hostage, even threatening to kill them if those that remained spoke a word against him. Sadly, 4 out of the 15 clergymen had lost their lives before they could be freed. Outside of the small circle, the crowd that had gathered stood in expectant silence. The hearing itself was very brief. As the priest stated,
There is little need for lengthy deliberation when the crimes committed are so heinous, the evidence so blatantly clear.
Before long the verdict had been given, and all that still needed to be carried out was the final sentence.
Lord Valrin, erstwhile Lord of Forkston and self-appointed ruler of Nuimor, after the planned assassination of your own brother, your crimes and repulsive deeds do not deserve to be included in the annals of history, save as a warning that such evil can fester in the hearts of men. Let this sentence act as an assurance that such evil shall not prevail. Thus you shall be put to the sword in the presence of those whose trust you have squandered and whose lives you sought to ruin. May the gods yet receive you. So may it be.
He then took his great sword in both hands and raised it high above his head. As the mighty blade crashed down upon Valrin's neck, the people cheered. As Prince Niren was still too young to succeed his father, Braelyn was appointed Lord Protector until the rightful heir could take the throne. Queen Ashrin's body was at last removed from her grave in the mountains and finally laid to rest on the banks of Lake Penleche, where she and her lover had spent so many intimate hours together. To this day, a memorial stands in a pond next to the lake. Upon the stone monolith a circle was carved, after which the stone was split in half to signify the queen's tragic death. Beneath it, in a marble-lined sarcophagus, lie the remains of Nuimor's most beloved and treasured ruler. Braelyn ordered that his own body be buried next to that of his lover. He never remarried and devoted himself to the teachings of the ancients once his term of office had been concluded. In his old age, he held the position of High Priest. Prince Niren was crowned 3 days after his 21st birthday. By then he and his cousin had become close friends, and Lord Revaler was appointed Lord Chancellor, the new king's right-hand man. Although the years that followed were not free of strife, a concerted effort was made to restore Nuimor to its former glory. King Niren married, but alas was only blessed with an heir after his queen suffered 2 consecutive miscarriages. However, the couple were granted the pleasure of 4 children after that, the oldest of which succeeded her father and was crowned Queen Ashrin II. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. It would mean the world to us.